All right, so welcome to another deep dive. And today we're looking ahead to 2025. We're going to be exploring something I think very interesting, how humans are going to be interacting with AI, especially as it gets even smarter than it is now.
Yeah, this is gonna be fascinating.
I think a lot of people probably wonder about like how our phones and our computers and all these devices that we use every day, how those might work a little bit differently in just a couple of years.
Right. And you've given me a really great set of materials to kind of dig through with you today.
Yeah, and I tried to pull in some really interesting stuff. We have these reports that are looking at like where interface research is headed, but also discussions about like how teams of AI might, function and work together, and then some really cool stuff about how we can guide AI and get insights from AI through prompting.
Prompt,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So our goal today is basically to unpack all of that. We want to pull out the most important information about you know, how this whole world of human AI interaction is going to evolve and what we should be thinking about.
Hmm.
And in particular, we're, really focused on how the look and feel of our technology, the interfaces, all those buttons and screens are going to be designed with, all of this advanced AI in mind and this idea, this intriguing idea of AI personas. So it's like, you can think of this as getting like a shortcut to all the really important insights, without having to dig through all this research yourself.
Right. I like it. Shortcut.
Yeah. So, I think one of the most important things to start with, I mean, this is just fundamental design thinking, but who are we actually designing these interfaces for?
Right. Right. I mean, it always comes back to the user, doesn't it?
Mm.
For all of the progress that we've made in AI, it seems like in 2025, and this is, from what we see in the reports you've shared, creating effective interfaces still really depends on understanding what people need and want.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like, a lot of the fundamental ways that we learn about what users want, they're not going away. I mean, we're still talking about like, sitting down with people and doing user interviews, having those direct conversations with them to understand their experiences and frustrations.
Hmm.
And then surveys too, right? I mean, like trying to get a broader sense of people's opinions,
Hmm.
focus groups, where you get a bunch of people together and you try to hear, all their different perspectives, and then actually going out into the real world and doing field studies, like observing how people actually use this technology in their daily lives.
Right.
And then of course like usability testing,
Mhm.
where you actually put something in front of somebody, watch them use it, and you try to find and fix anything that's confusing or difficult to use, and then things like card sorting and tree testing, where you're trying to figure out like is the information organized in a way that makes sense to people.
Yeah. I, you know, it's it's interesting to see that these sort of core methods, and this is very much reflected in interface research directions outlined that you shared with me, that these core methods are still considered very important.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see that they're not being replaced entirely. It's just they're sort of being augmented almost
Right.
in some ways.
Right. And that's what's particularly interesting here is how AI is beginning to kind of be integrated with these, more established research methods.
Mhm.
This that same report suggests that AI is increasingly going to be used to help analyze the huge amounts of data that we get from users, but then also to automate some of the more repetitive aspects of that research process.
Yeah.
You can imagine, AI helping to identify common themes in hundreds of user interviews, and
Yeah.
then that frees up, the human researchers to focus on the more nuanced and interesting details.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that kind of leads us into this idea of prediction. Like how do we actually use all this data and all this knowledge to predict what users are going to do next?
Right.
And the report talks about these predictive modeling techniques, and we see them already in a lot of the apps and services that we use every day,
Hmm.
right? Like Spotify seems to know exactly what kind of music I want to hear with these Discover Weekly playlists.
Right.
Netflix comes up with these surprisingly accurate movie recommendations,
Right.
and even just Google tries to guess what I'm searching for as I type, so I don't have to type the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like those are all examples of these predictive interfaces.
Right. And interface research directions outlined highlights that these predictive interfaces work by looking at past user behavior. So the things that we've bought, websites that we visited,
Hmm.
links that we've clicked to try and anticipate what we might do in the future.
Yeah, yeah, it's using, machine learning algorithms to basically find the patterns and all that data and
Yeah.
then use that to guide us in a way.
Right. And if we kind of zoom out a little bit and think about this in the bigger picture, it's all about trying to make, our interactions with technology smoother and enjoyable by almost thinking ahead for us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And but it's not, it's not all like roses and sunshine here.
Yep.
Right. There are some important things to think about when we're talking about this predictive modeling stuff.
Yeah, this raises a really crucial point, and one is the potential for what we call algorithmic bias.
Mm.
If the data that these models are learning from isn't actually representative of everyone or it contains, existing biases, then predictions that they're making could end up being unfair or discriminatory.
Yeah, yeah.
Another important thing to consider is that, we need to balance this helpful automation with respecting, the user's sense of control.
Mm.
We don't want to create systems that feel like they're making decisions for us without any input or understanding from us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I still want to feel like I'm in charge, right?
Right. Right.
Not like the AI is in charge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the user still needs to feel empowered.
Okay. So I think we've got a pretty good understanding of the user, and some of the challenges there. But let's actually get into, how are the interfaces themselves changing
Right.
to better serve those needs and also to take advantage of AI. And the report really emphasizes this idea of interactions that feel intuitive and seamless.
Yeah, that's right. One of the major things that's driving this is advancements in natural language processing, or NLP.
Right.
We're really seeing a lot of progress in creating conversational interfaces that feel more natural,
Right.
and more human-like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see that dialogue and interactive systems is a key topic at the EMNLP 2025 conference, as that report mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, and the research in this area is really pushing those boundaries. I mean, they're trying to create personalized dialogue systems that learn and adapt as you talk to them.
Right.
Enabling these more complex multi-turn conversations that feel, less like you're just giving commands and more like you're having a natural discussion.
Right, right.
And they're even exploring how these AI agents, can provide emotional support and integrate just these vast amounts of knowledge into those conversations.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's wild. And we're even seeing research into AI actually generating the user interfaces themselves.
Wow.
Like the report mentions AI companions that have this ability to dynamically create designs.
Yeah, that does sound pretty advanced.
Yeah.
And it really points to a future where you could have, these incredibly tailored experiences.
Right.
Imagine an interface that changes its layout as features based on what you're trying to accomplish at that specific moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But regardless of how the interface is created, the report really stresses the importance of clear and context-aware feedback mechanisms.
Yeah, yeah.
The user always needs to be able to easily understand what the system is doing and why it's doing it, and what the results are.
Yeah. It needs to be centered around the user, It needs to adapt in real time to what's happening, and it needs to be integrated smoothly so it doesn't feel disruptive.
Right.
So the report also touches on something that I think is very practical, which is how do we design these interfaces to prevent errors from happening in the first place?
Right. And these are just fundamental, principles of good design.
Yeah.
Things like limiting the number of choices that a user has to make at any given time.
Yeah.
Being forgiving with their input, like, automatically correcting common typos.
Right.
Trying to predict what they might intend to type or select. Using constraints to guide their actions.
Yeah.
Maintaining a consistent look and feel throughout the interface.
Right.
And providing warnings before they take actions that might have unintended consequences.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all these small details, they really add up to a more user-friendly experience and a less error-prone experience.
Right. I mean, preventing those mistakes is always better than just providing a helpful error message after something has gone wrong.
So let's get into this idea of making these interfaces feel truly personal. And the report explores, personalization, this ability to understand the context that we're in, and something that I think is absolutely vital, which is universal accessibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Personalization, it's evolving beyond just changing, colors or fonts.
Right.
Interface research directions outlined explains that by using data analytics and machine learning, interfaces can actually be tailored to to individual users in a much more sophisticated way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using all sorts of techniques, regression, association rules, clustering, and deep learning to try to really customize these experiences.
Yeah.
And the trend seems to be that this is moving towards real-time personalization,
Right.
where the interface adapts to what you're actively doing at that moment.
Right, right. It's not just like it's pre-programmed or something. It's actually adapting in the moment.
Right, right.
And that kind of leads directly to this concept of adaptive user interfaces, or AUIs.
Right,
Right. And the report gives, I think, some excellent examples like how Duolingo adjusts its lessons based on your progress and where you're struggling, or how Google Maps prioritizes different information depending on whether you're driving, walking, or taking public transport.
right.
Like, these are all examples of these interfaces that can just dynamically change based on, our actions, the situation that we're in, and the preferences that we've shown across all of our devices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as we're making things more tailored, we must not overlook universal accessibility.
Yeah.
The report rightly emphasizes this, and it introduces the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, and specifically WCAG 2.2, which came out in October of 2023. And these are a set of internationally recognized guidelines that are all about making sure that websites and other digital content are designed in a way that is usable by everyone, including people with disabilities.
Yeah. And these guidelines are built on 4 core principles:
Yes, that's right.
perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust.
Right. And that's often, people remember that by the acronym POUR.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I like that.
And the report kind of goes into detail on each of these principles.
Yeah, yeah. So perceivable means that, the information has to be presented in a way that users can actually perceive it. Like, it can't be invisible to all of their senses.
Right. Operable means that the interface has to be, easy to navigate and that users can interact with all of its components.
Yeah.
Understandable means that the information and the way the interface works has to be clear and easy to grasp.
Yeah.
And robust means that the content should be able to be used with a wide range of technologies, including assistive technologies like screen readers.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's really important is that WTAG 2.2 actually introduced some new, very specific criteria
Right.
to build on these core principles and really try to address some of the more nuanced accessibility needs. And the report highlights, things like focus not obscured, which makes sure that, when you're navigating a website using a keyboard, you can clearly see what element has the focus. Target size minimum, making sure that buttons and things are large enough to easily tap, especially on a touch screen.
Right, right.
Consistent help, so that users can always find assistance in a predictable way. Accessible authentication, which is focused on making, login processes easier for everyone. And then a couple of others like dragging movements and redundant entry.
Yeah. And it seems like, a lot of these updates are designed to make, the digital world more inclusive for people with a wider range of abilities.
Yeah, yeah. And the report also mentions, assistive technologies like screen readers, which read the on-screen text aloud, and speech recognition software. And it emphasizes how these interfaces need to be designed to work seamlessly with these tools.
Yeah. And going beyond just meeting those technical guidelines, the report also introduces the broader principles of inclusive design.
Yeah.
And this is really more of a philosophy that's all about creating products and services that are usable by as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And it's really considering, the full spectrum of human diversity from the very start of the design process.
Yeah.
So it's not just about complying with those accessibility standards. It's really striving for truly equitable and user-friendly experiences for everyone.
All right. So this is where I think things get particularly interesting.
Okay.
And this is where, we start to really directly relate to the AI personas part of our discussion. The report talks about integrating these specialized AI personas. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah. So this is a really fascinating area of research.
Yeah.
So the System Interface Agency, as mentioned in the report, and this is also very prominent in System Interface Agency research focus
Hmm.
that you shared. This group, they've developed a set of these specialized personas,
Hmm.
and they're really interesting. So we've got Foz, Kulik Fizz, Kiklameta, Fizz.
These are some cool names.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And then Humor Evaluator.
And the basic idea here is that each of these represents a different kind of expertise or
Yeah,
capability.
exactly.
Right. And so the system can dynamically call upon their unique abilities as needed. So, imagine interacting with an AI that could tap into, the creativity of a brainstorming persona, but then also, the analytical power of a persona that's really good at crunching data, and then maybe even one that understands humor.
Right, right,
Like it's almost like having a built-in team of AI experts within the interface.
right. And the report also discusses these collaborative interaction models
Yeah.
involving, multiple AI personas.
Right. Like how would that actually work?
Right. So the researchers are really exploring how these different AI personas can work together in a coordinated fashion to address, a user's request or problem. So it's kind of like, assembling a virtual team of specialists.
Yeah.
Each contributing, their particular expertise.
And so this kind of leads us to these advanced prompting techniques that are mentioned in the report, right? So we have multi-persona prompting, or MPP,
Right.
and then solo performance prompting, or SPP.
Right.
And these seem like key ways to effectively utilize these AI personas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So MPP, as outlined in interface research directions outlined in prompting, it really involves specifically defining different roles or expert viewpoints. And then you're prompting an AI model to analyze, a given issue from each of those perspectives. So it's kind of like you're getting, a range of AI opinions on the same topic.
Oh, interesting.
So the process generally involves clearly defining, what are the characteristics of each persona, crafting prompts that are tailored to their expertise, and then generating, those different viewpoints. And it's worth noting that, human oversight is still very important here.
Yeah.
We still need to kind of synthesize and interpret those various AI insights.
Yeah. So it's not just like we can, let the AI run wild. We still have to be involved in that process.
Right, absolutely.
And SPP, or solo performance prompting, it sounds even more sophisticated.
It does, yeah.
So the report indicates that with this technique, the AI itself can dynamically identify and orchestrate the use of these personas, often with the help of an overarching AI assistant.
That's right. So SPP, and you can find more details on this in interface research directions outlined, as well as prompting. SPP takes this whole concept a step further.
Okay.
So instead of a human having to explicitly prompt, for each persona, the AI system is designed to autonomously figure out, which personas would be most valuable for a particular task or query. And then this AI assistant acts kind of like a conductor.
Okay.
It's guiding this sort of iterative collaboration process between these simulated expert selves to arrive at a more refined and comprehensive solution. So it's kind of like, the AI is having its own internal brainstorming session, drawing on, different aspects of its knowledge and reasoning abilities as if they were distinct experts.
Yeah. And the report even mentions these platforms like Team AI that are being developed to help manage and deploy these. And that sounds like the kind of underlying infrastructure that could make this whole, concept of AI personas a practical reality.
Exactly, yeah. These types of platforms, they're going to provide the tools to handle, the complexity of having multiple AI models working together and allowing for, easier integration, deployment, and just overall management of these sophisticated systems.
Now, the report also touches on this idea of meta-communication in HCI, which is communication about communication.
Right.
It sounds a little bit abstract, but how does this relate to, the interfaces we're talking about?
Right. So the report of interface research directions outlined, it explains, meta-communication as those subtle cues and design elements that really influence how a user interprets the information that's being presented. So, in a practical sense, it means designing interfaces that can actually communicate something about their own processes
Okay.
to the user. So, for example, an interface might visually indicate that it's currently processing a request,
Hmm.
or it might provide like a brief explanation of the factors that went into, generating a particular recommendation. And the idea here is to really try to make the system's, thinking or current state
Right.
more transparent and understandable to the user.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I want to know like what's happening behind the scenes a little bit.
Right. And that can build trust
Right, right.
and a sense of control.
And this seems to connect to the role of the compare
Yes.
within the system interface agency, as mentioned in the report, and system interface agency research focus.
Right.
And the compare is described as this, someone who's essentially orchestrating these AI personas and making sure that ethical considerations are taken into account.
Exactly. Yeah. The compare is kind of like the conductor in an orchestra of AI agents, making sure that the different personas are working together effectively and in accordance with, the intended guidelines and principles.
Hmm.
And that role is really important for managing the potential complexity of these multi-agent interactions
Yeah.
and ensuring that they align with, the agency's goals and values.
So the report also dives into the integration of advanced knowledge graphs. What are some of the key benefits of using knowledge graphs in this whole world of future interfaces and AI personas?
Right. So knowledge graphs, they're basically these, highly structured and interconnected ways of organizing information.
Okay.
And interface research directions outlined explains that they offer, significant advantages for data integration, and they allow for much more insightful exploration of that data.
Okay, and the report it mentions Kicklang, which is the agency's specific query language as a way to efficiently interact with and explore the data within these knowledge graphs, and it compares it to other similar languages like Cake or Flanga.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
These specialized query languages are designed to be more intuitive and more powerful
Mm-hmm.
for interacting with the complex relationships within knowledge graphs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they allow, both the AI systems and potentially human users
Yeah.
to efficiently, retrieve, analyze, and explore, the vast amounts of information stored in this structured format.
Yeah.
And that can lead to, much more powerful and user-friendly ways
Yeah.
to access and understand data through the interface.
So finally, the report touches on this idea of dynamic role modeling within AI teams. And this is drawing from, a number of different sources, authority, drive, modeling, and team.
Right.
And this seems to go beyond, just the AI personas interacting with the user.
Right.
And it's looking at how do the AI agents themselves work together internally.
That's right. So delegated authority is a key principle here, as outlined in authority, and this involves assigning, specific powers and responsibilities to different members of the AI team, and that allows for more efficient collaboration and decision making within the system itself.
And so the report details these, various roles like a system spokesperson, a task assigner, a performance evaluator, and each one has a defined scope of authority and responsibilities.
Right, and this isn't a fixed structure, is it?
Right.
The mention of dynamic tasks and even these kind of placeholder concepts like placebo pipes,
Yeah.
as discussed in authority, drive, modeling, and team,
Yeah.
really suggests this more fluid and adaptable way of working for these AI agents.
Yeah, so basically, dynamic role modeling, as they explain it, in modeling and team, is this ability of the team, in this case, a team of AI agents, to adapt and change the roles and responsibilities of its members as the needs of a project or task evolve.
Right.
Right, and the report kind of outlines a process for doing this, right? Like you clearly define the potential roles.
Yeah, right.
You assign, levels of authority, you establish communication channels between the agents, and then you're constantly monitoring and adjusting that team structure as needed.
Right.
And it's all about, trying to find the most effective configuration of that AI team for whatever challenge you're facing.
So it sounds like, to bring all of this together, the future of how we interact with AI
Yeah.
in 2025, is really going to be characterized by this, strong focus on the user,
Yeah, yeah.
really leveraging, the increasing intelligence of AI
Right.
to create these highly personalized and intuitive experiences. We're going to see the emergence of these specialized AI personas
Yeah.
to enhance problem solving and provide these more diverse perspectives.
Hmm.
And then, kind of behind the scenes, the AI agents themselves will be working together in more flexible and dynamic ways.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to think about, how these trends will play out.
It really gives us a glimpse into a very rapidly advancing and intricate field.
So for those of you listening, as you're considering all of this, I mean, what aspects of these trends seem the most significant to you?
Yeah, what are you most excited about?